Hey everyone, it's Will, Gamer Dad, with another video for you. So first off, I'd like to give a shout out to my newest Patreon supporter, Nout. Thanks for your support. Now in today's video, we're going to go over Ewella as a 5-star, and we'll go over her moves and what I think about her. But the most important question of all is
she hot or not?
Well, she has a twin, so yeah, she's hot. Anyways, as a Crystal Lance unit, she does have the ability to double her moves, and you can see her abilities there and her stats. Pretty fast Lance user anyways. Now in terms of her VC, not bad. Crit rate of all party members plus 100% for one move. And if you see later on in the video, you'll note that she is a great crit setter or 100% crit rate setter for your Pierce team. You can see the 3 moves I'm going with, although you can actually adjust her kit a little bit depending on your particular needs. Now, first of all, let's talk about her 3rd slot here. This is the Vade Mecum. And I know I'm mispronouncing some of these, but Crystal and Water type resist of all enemies down 30%, guaranteed for 3 turns, and speed of all party members plus 30 for 3 turns. So not too bad to initiate during AF, make your team a little bit faster, have a little bit more rotations during the AF, or if you need to outspeed a particular boss or enemy during a long fight, that's not a bad one to go with. Also enhances your damage as well. Now, even though she is a crystal unit, she doesn't have many crystal type attacks. In terms of this one, Esto Perpetua, it gives a barrier that reduces damage by 30% one time, and it lasts for 3 turns if not hit. And it also restores all statuses. Now, it's pretty MP intensive. However, if you really need that extra shielding by 30%, now keep in mind, this is a barrier that reduces both magic and physical attacks. So a little bit different from other type shields. However, it is only a one-time. And the other thing is, it's 30% from the large number. So it can make the difference between surviving and failing. And you can see that small crystal type move. One last thing about the barrier. It does stack with other buffs and debuffs. So not too bad at all. Now, in terms of her 2 signature moves that help with damage and crit setting, the Eternum Amare is the souped up 5-star move, power and int plus 20, so not that great. It lasts for about 3 turns, and it also gives crit rate of all party members plus 100% during next action for 3 moves, and crit damage plus 40% for 3 turns for everybody. When it's during Crystal Lunatic, it increases the number of moves to 6 moves for guaranteed crit 100%. Now, when you activate Crystal, keep in mind that it doubles the move, and so you'll actually have both of them activate back to back, which means you'll give the power and int right off the bat, and then the 6 moves. However, when she's outside Lunatic, it's extremely slow and locks her up for 2 turns. Now, the Savith Fororum is her spam move, and so like I said, her main DPS is Water type. Water type Pierce, single enemy XL, and type resist down 25%, stackable for 3 turns up to 50. And that's outside Lunatic. Now keep in mind that when you do activate Lunatic, it changes to Water type Pierce AoE, single target XL 3 times, and stack this Insanier, and increase in damage during the number of stacked of those on the target, and further increases damage when critical. So being that she is going to set her own crit, essentially her damage is going to go pretty high with this move. Again, it also increases combo multiplier, being the 3 times hit instead of 1 time hit. Now the major downside is, although it increases damage by stacking those stacks, you do lose the type resist debuff, and so it might not help your other members nearly as much. Also, keep in mind that the limitations of Lunatic units is that Lunatic only lasts for 3 turns, which I'll also show you later on in this video. And you can see her 5-star board. Most of her moves are actually very expensive as well, so she won't last long under a heavy fight. In terms of grass stat, I'm sure you can specify this a little bit more. I just put on the standard kind of like, type, or elemental type and pain type. Let's take her out for a spin. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. I also do have a Patreon account for those who want to support me this way. So obviously against enemies weak to water, she does a pretty decent amount of damage, and against enemies who are not too great, it's only much less in damage. Also, you need the crit to really enhance the damage and inside Lunatic as well. So if you're in for long fights, you will probably have to hold back on the Lunatic move and activate it only when you feel that it's necessary to give you that little bit of a push to end the fight right there then. Now again, with most Lunatic units, keep in mind also that, in shorter fights, less than 4 turns, Lunatic works extremely well. So you can see I activated Lunatic and note those 6 hits and stacking those red things. And as you can see, even though the enemy is not weak to water, the damage we're dealing to the enemy is a lot more than on the other smaller mob. Now where she really shines is to help guarantee crit setting for your top DPS in the game. So in this case, we are using Miltia as our DPS, and I know that a lot of people have already beaten the Unseen, and I'll show you the difference in what happens when you do have a crit setter on your team versus one team that does not have it. So in our first example, obviously, we're going to activate our Lunatic, and we're going to have multiple hits. Keep in mind that when you do activate Crystal Lunatic, the second round of 3 hits do not add to the AF bar, so it does not extend the AF bar. But still, you're getting 6 hits for essentially the price of 3, and her damage is pretty good. And note that we have set up everything, and that's where we really shine. The increased crit damage by 40% guaranteed crit rate. You can really have Miltia deal a ton of damage at the end of that particular turn, and we can end Unseen with 1 turn. I mean, you can actually still use, for example, Foreign AS, which sets crit to 100% as well for 4 turns, but really the extra 40% damage for crit damage is really what pushes that over the top, being that that end of turn for Miltia is actually a guaranteed crit on her own and does not need the assistance of Ewella. Of course, having the extra crit damage boost from Melissa, 30%, as well as Claude, 30%, really helps with the synergy as well. So most teams that we really do develop for fights really does need a crit setter. Now, you can see that we're going to use the same team, except that instead of using Ewella, we're going to use AS Seal. And keep in mind, you must think that AS Seal is really, really good, obviously, which he is. Type resist down 50%, increase crit damage by 30% as well. So you're probably thinking, are we going to deal more damage with Miltia, being that we have all that extra type resist down? And obviously the type resist down also enhances that end of move attack with the, with that kind of AoE. But however, because we don't guarantee crits, the damage is actually much less of an output. And you can see that instead of 70 million or so, we only got about 39 million. And again, that is RNG dependent. And note that we do have 29 million, which is the guaranteed crit hit with Miltia. Like I said before, she doesn't need other people to set her crit for that end of turn hit. But even because of that, you see the 10% difference, right? Seal only gives 30% increased crit damage, and Joella gives 40%. So, like I said before, hopefully that shows the difference between having a crit setter on your team versus not having a crit setter on your team, even though that other units may do a ton of damage as well. Again, I know that Mayunfa didn't do too much, and Foreign does actually hold a little bit of shared Grasta to help enhance the Pierce units. Now, obviously, we can use a Pierce zone or a Water zone against certain enemies. I will say that this example is more for a longer fight to show the abilities as well as some of the limitations of Ewella. Now, I did actually try some play testing with a water team, and one thing I will share with you is I feel that water elemental teams, well, now with the advent of AS Shigiri, is much better. Before that, I felt that water actually didn't put out as much DPS, and I'll explain my reasonings behind that. Now, with most elemental type zones, as well as most weapon type zones, at the end of turn, your zone setter actually boosts the attack of all your party members in the front line who share that same kind of weapon type or elemental type. I'll give you an example. Slash zone users, namely, obviously, Radius, and I think also AS Lulu, give 15% extra slash damage for every slash move done at the end of the turn for the next turn. Same with AS Foreign, I believe it's 15% extra pierce damage per move used, up to 4 moves for the end of turn for the next turn. However, with AS Yuna, for example, she only gives an end of turn heal, And for AS Annabelle, only gives an elemental shield depending on the number of moves done. AS Shigiri, of course, does fix that because he does increase type damage based on the number of moves done the previous turn. But before that, water was a little bit weaker. So this doesn't truly showcase the potential of Ewella. Anyways, we are taking on one of the tougher super bosses in the game, the Logi. And the reason why Logi is challenging is not only that they have multiple phases, all 4 true spirits are actually pretty tough. This one just seems to be fast in general, and the mobs actually boost both, I guess, the power, speed, and int of the boss and mobs, such that they can really outwear you and outdamage you, and you can really take a ton of damage. So we really do have to strategize our moves here and end the battle by using a certain phase. You can see that we did already do an AF to do the first phase down, and now the bulk of the damage has to be done in the second phase. So normally if you had a really high-end DPS unit, you could probably end the phase right here with either 30 or 40 million hit or AF. In this case, we actually have to play it a little bit more carefully and use the more traditional moves, having zone setting, of course, having Aurora Force, having heals, and so on and so forth. Keep in mind that since we are in weapon zone, that is Pierce zone, the magic heal from Pure Cradle from Mariel is not nearly as effective. It is reduced by 30%. However, obviously with her high int and heal in general, you're probably not going to have a problem here. So of course we cleared off the 2 mobs, and that's great. This is the turn 3 99% HP down, which guarantees you to still survive. And of course turn 4 is the large AoE that we have to prevent, since it is elemental and fire based. Keep in mind that, again, using an all water team or mostly water team, they have natural 30% resistance to fire attacks, and so they take a lot less damage. Jade, of course, is not, and neither is Mariel, and so if you look at the numbers, they did take a little bit more damage than the other 2, which is AS Leclerc and AS Ford. Now, I know you must be wondering, what's the point of having Ewella here, and how is her limitation, or what are her strengths here? So obviously, her strengths here are outside of AF and outside of using Lunatic, she can still apply those type resist debuff up to 50% 3 stacks, of course, and that actually does stack with the water resist debuff of AS Claire. So if you can get that move in and do a couple of moves on the boss, being that you've already removed the mobs, you can start really stacking up those abilities, and then eventually when you activate a large AF, you can do significant damage to the boss itself. One of the other things that has limitations of Ewella is that obviously on multiple phases, especially in things like the Battle Simulator, aka Boss Rush, or other types of fights like Melosia, seeing that the bosses actually completely disappear and then has a new phase, you actually don't get to keep those stacks on the boss. Now with Logi, for example, you do actually get to keep the stacks. Same with the twins, for example, because they still stay in the game, and then you just have different phases of the fight. But with other ones where the boss completely disappears, you really do have a lot of issues there, and so the stacks that you put in terms of the debuffs don't last on the enemy. However, we do have a full AF now, and so this is our time to shine. We're going to activate Lunatic here. We didn't get all those type resist debuffs, and we didn't also use the one that applies, multiple debuffs. However, we still put the crystal and water resist debuff from her first move for Ewella, and note that there are 2 icons for water resist debuff. One is applied from Serious Wolf's Dance, and one is applied by Ewella here. And if you watch the EF, note that the second 3-hit combo from Joella did not continue charging the AF bar. The combo meter still goes up, which is pretty good. However, did you notice that our damage is only 32 million? And part of the reason, of course, for that is that Jade does not contribute to the water type attacks, and so therefore doesn't benefit for those water resist debuffs. If it was a type resist debuff, of course, we would have much better results with that. And unfortunately, I don't have AS Hismina, so we can't do a full demonstration. However, our main DPS in this team, of course, is AS Leclerc, being that when she's boosted with critical and has those Serious Wolf's Dance icons on the enemy, it can do a lot of damage. Now, against fights with multi-mobs, that move, the Serious Wolf's Dance, is not nearly as effective, being that you can only put 1 stack on 1 enemy at a time. And now we are getting down to the final phase of Logi here. And keep in mind that Lunatic, like I said earlier, does only have 3 turns that it works on. So it works best when you activate it either during the AF or right around the AF so that you can get the maximum number of moves. And so optimal setup for Ewella will be something like in a longer fight to kind of stack 2 to 3 type resist debuffs so you can get all 50% on it. And then if you really need the additional 30% water resist debuff, you can use her setup move there and then apply Lunatic and then do multiple hits for the 6 hits. However, outside of AF, having 6 hits combo with Ewella, being that it does repeat automatically without additional MP cost, is actually not bad in that sense, being that it can still do a significant amount of damage. It's just that now you see that since this fight was a little bit longer, being that I don't have something like AS Spinner to end the fight really quickly, we are down back to our original move. She can now apply her type resist debuff, and we cannot activate Lunatic anymore. But that being said, even when she lost her Lunatic, because she's not like a Shade where she's extra vulnerable or totally useless and her main move is still has water type resist debuff, she still has some use on the team, just not nearly as much as a top tier DPS. I would say that after some playtesting with Ewella, I find her more of a great support in terms of, like I said earlier, crit rate setter, helping your top DPS do more damage. Obviously, as a Lance user, she has a lot of synergy with people like AS Hismina and AS Foreign. And after all, having those extra hits during the AF when she activates Lunatic can do pretty well for the combo meter. So again, as usual, I'll show you my setup. I know that this probably wasn't the optimal demonstration of Ewella, but still, I wanted to give you a realistic expectation of what to have with her. A lot of people think, oh, if you just add 1 unit to your team, that is going to be a game breaker. And I can tell you from my experience at least, and I could be wrong on this, Ewella wasn't a complete game breaker for me. So in conclusion, I feel that Ewella is a great crit setter, increases crit damage for the whole team, can apply a lot of different types of water debuffs or type resist debuffs. However, on Pierce teams, you actually do have AS4 as your crit setter anyways for now. And so I'm not sure if she's absolutely necessary for a team. That being said, if you do have really top tier units, I think Ewella will make a great add to any water type team. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.